Hi, this is Dr. Zeus coming to you from sunny Penryn, California, outside of Sacramento. I have a new set behind me, as you can see. This is one of the benefits of teaching an online course. Um, I have not the best download speeds here, so I'm hoping this works just fine. Anyway, I'd like to start with the Ask Dr. Zeus. We've gotten so many amazing personal stories in applying a lot of the experiments in this class. I almost feel like I could be reading for hours. I've tried to be selective and get some of the most, I wouldn't say necessarily interesting, but the most helpful and informative aspects of some of your stories and contributions. As usual, I'm not putting names to anything. I'm using this all as an educational opportunity to get you to really engage and learn into emotions. And you've been doing a wonderful job. The proof is in the pudding. We can get right to some of the contributions here and begin to discuss why doing this works. Again, let me stress that the typical situation is people avoiding the emotions or trying to control emotions. It's a typical academic approach, and oftentimes it's even a therapeutic approach. Manage situations, not necessarily resolve conflicts, but manage conflicts. Really, what I'm doing is a much more affirmative and creative approach, is to learn into the situation, see what emotions are telling us. Those antisocial or so-called negative emotions like fear, anxiety, and anger usually open the door to some kind of issue about expression, about seeing, about interacting or developing a relationship. So that's really what we really want to, it's a much more affirmative approach. There's some benefit, I would say, to regulating or being able to avoid situations that trigger you. But it's far stronger to be able to face situations that trigger you, work through them, and look at the underlying patterns and influences that give rise to certain emotions. This to me seems a little bit, I shall say, self-evident, but a lot of times people aren't doing that. Academia in general doesn't really prepare you to deal with your emotions head on. Academics themselves tend to use the mind and have had a history of developing that. So they use mental, research-oriented constructs, which tend to be very functional or mechanical. We're doing a much more hybrid approach in this class. We do experiments in real life. We do application. We use academic material to help provide a framework, but not use academic material to develop our actual approach. And that's the difference here. We're trusting ourselves, our own ability to analyze critically, to creatively come up with new examples, to express our compassion through empathy. We're actually activating these things we're talking about. And finally, to develop capability through engagement of academic readings, applying that in our work. I hope this is evident by now. And if your work is any indication, it's more than evident. It's actually practical and working really well. So let me go ahead and put my little picture down in the corner here, and we'll jump right on it. It's been a while since I put one of these out, so we're probably going to cut up these videos. But these are weeks 8, 9, and 10. We've been going through fear, anxiety, anger, and then the last one was disgust and contempt. I'm just going to split these up via time. It's already 3 minutes now, and hopefully do about a half an hour on each one of these, and then we can use these as videos that we can watch later on if we need to, also for our final projects, which has to do with these classes of emotions, or I mean group presentations. So let's get started. There's a lot of new material coming in. Some of you are turning in late work, so I'm going to throw in little things from past assignments too here. So one person said, maybe remembering the bad feeling will make me push myself out of it. If anything, this has helped me open up to my husband a lot more. I related this feeling that was explained by Kessinger and Schachter, that remembering a negative experience may be good for well-being. Re-experiencing the event will help a person plan or avoid its future recurrence. Now that's true in a shortcut way, but I would also say, as I do down here, that actually this doesn't work very well. New therapeutic techniques are finding that sharing something traumatic and negative can initially take the weight off, but dwelling on it or believing that simply becoming aware of it's going to solve the problem does not in fact work. We can help it recognize and avoid future negative emotional events, but it also keeps you in a reactive mode, increasing and reinforcing anxiety about when another episode does emerge that you did not anticipate. Again, it's a much more hale and hearty way to take on the emotion than to simply avoid it. Okay, so this is what I mean by learning into a feeling. Don't silence yourself or the feeling. See the feeling, even a negative emotion, as a doorway into a deeper way of relating, a deeper understanding of yourself. You can get it off your chest, but don't dwell on it either. And do not simply view awareness in terms of avoiding the negative, but in allowing awareness of the negative emotion to open the door to eliciting and learning the positive antidote to a negative emotion. So that's our approach in this class, okay? Just to sort of let you know. There's a question on judgment. This person talks about not liking to work with a person for a prolonged period of time, okay? She developed a negative judgment about a coworker, and she said, I felt as though I became more mean with her as time passed. She actually texted me the other day and made me feel better, as if I had someone to talk to. I think that negative judgment can inspire positive judgment. I don't think this is a lesson we want to get from this. It's better. It's true, okay? And I say it down here. And she said this other person was able to realize this without doing this, without even me talking. So there are two lessons here that I do not want you to get from here. If you exercise a negative judgment on someone, sometimes that can make them uncomfortable and they try to compensate by being positive toward you. I don't want you to think that then negative judgments work. And the second thing is trying to get people to read your mind through nonverbal cues rather than talking it out and empathizing may work on occasion, but it's not the best way. It may work for you, but for that other person, you're putting a lot of stress on them and a lot of responsibility on them. So here's what I would say to this. A good attempt, this is how I respond to this, a good attempt but needs deeper understanding of the dynamics. I'm not asking you to dwell in the negative feeling, but to learn and observe it and then reverse it by trying to stimulate thoughts and practices that, in this person's case, would focus on what you can now actively be happy about. Similarly, with your coworker, you can actually be negative, mean, and judgmental with someone, and they can pick up on the energy of that and attempt to reverse your energy by being nice to you. Your job would be to recognize that person's trying to reverse your energy as a gift, rather than thinking that judgmentalism and negativism is going to work and to make someone feel obligated to be nice to you. That would be manipulation of emotions, and we don't want manipulation. It's not respectful to the other person's being. So again, let me stress, you can actually oftentimes get a so-called favorable response by manipulating someone else's emotions, but I'm saying don't, okay? It teaches you bad habits, and it puts unnecessary pressure on them. I'm asking you to empathize. I'm asking you to reverse a negative judgment. I'm asking you to look for opportunities in the situations to talk, and you'd be surprised how much your negative judgment really lacked the kind of information and the kind of bonding necessary to create a healthy, positive relationship, even with someone you don't really like that much. That's important there, okay? All right. This person said, I'm okay with researching and presenting on either one of these three classes, these emotional classes. I was getting the reasons why you're doing it, because I feel all of these in an equal manner. This person shows anger, frustration, and aggression because this person uses this emotion to cover up feeling anxious, overwhelmed, and sad. Again, drawing on my thing, that anger offloads emotional responsibility, burden, and distress caused by shame, guilt, failure, insecurity, and low self-esteem. We're really beginning to understand how these emotions come together. They interrelate. Anger is a good cover-all emotion. You're feeling anxious or something unexplained. Anger can consolidate it, make it very coherent, especially if you project it out at another person or object or thing, kicking a tree, hopefully not kicking your dog. It seems to discharge it. Again, the problem is it doesn't get at the root cause. So the cause for that anger or that anxiety that's being covered up by anger comes up again and again and again. A lot of what we're trying to do in this class is look into patterns, but also look into sociocultural variables and underlying needs and concerns that drive certain emotions. Once these emotional patterns are understood, or we investigate them, and that's part of the reason why I do this Ask Dr. Zeus, so you can see other people's experiences and successes, the more we develop a craft understanding about how to go forward. So again, by learning into something rather than avoiding it or getting all nervous, but being curious and fascinated, we develop a positive intrinsic motivation to go into our emotions and those of others. We provide opportunities to empathize, and all of a sudden we now have a whole new arena to work out an emotion without it being traumatic, without it being so full of pressure. And that's what we're really trying to do in this class. So let's keep going on here. For instance, it said, just to say this, if I learn how to manage this emotion and use it constructively, my relationship with my spouse would improve immensely. Uh, Something that I know would be a challenge to my impulsiveness. Again, this sense of emotional intelligence, understanding you, understanding the importance of doing this stuff. Again, I'm glad that you're picking up on that in this class. The reason I picked anger, frustration, aggression is not so much for the anger or aggression issues, but I'm interested in the frustration part of emotion. Again, frustration oftentimes is linked with anger. This person is frustrated with what he or she sees as a lack of moral acts in society. When a younger person fails to open a door for an elderly lady, or driving down the highway, in which they seem to be focused on what they're doing, they create unsafe situations. Self-centered to the point of self-absorption. If you notice, especially in the modern world, people are a lot of you had the pet peeves about cell phones, and then it seems like this virtual reality and this bombardment of all the stimulus in the modern world is creating a situation where people are almost necessarily becoming self-centered and self-absorbed and overwhelmed. So this doesn't have to be a condition. A lot of you have already said you can put away your cell phone. You can clear the clutter of your mind. And you can become much more aware of being courteous to other people and your relationships with other people. But it is a situation we're dealing with, and you will deal with in your work as professionals associated with the field of psychology. So just something to note. And it creates anxiety, it creates rage and hatred, as some of these other things have said, whether it's road rage or something else, and at the very least, inconsideration for other people. So again, understand that this is a historical condition that has personal and interpersonal consequences. And again, we're going to learn how to begin to deal with this, okay? Here's one on fear. My greatest personal fear is pregnancy and childbirth. I fear the changes that occur to a woman's body when she is pregnant, as well as the painful process of giving birth and the problems that occur during the process. In addition, there's a fear of financial responsibility and sacrifice that comes with being a parent. Fear only shows when the childbirth is talked about or shown. Okay, so actual events, even though they haven't happened to you, and obviously there isn't a previous event around childbirth for this person, but it's, again, that anticipation can create anxiety, okay? And it can change behavior. Like I said, this fear pushes this person to be more cautious in the sex life, not to get accidentally pregnant. Now, here's an interesting thing. This person tried to overcome fear by forcing herself to read or watch material on the topic when it comes up in school, pushing herself to read no matter how hard it was about this stuff in an effort to overcome, like sort of expose yourself to the fear, expose yourself to fear, and something about informing yourself is automatically going to cure it. Turns out this doesn't work very well, does it? Okay. This fear started at puberty. Maybe she had some traumatic or family experiences around puberty that made it seem, terrible, or there was some fear that was connected to that, okay? And I say that this is a really interesting example because it appears to be a subconscious fear that some may mistake as an irrational fear, okay? Those are hard to unearth, but perhaps it's a reaction to physical vulnerability and financial vulnerability that goes to the survival of women or of past family life. It doesn't have necessarily to do just with the apparent direct object of the fear, which is pregnancy, but all the things, vulnerabilities that may bring up. Again, what's interesting about this is that this person tried to force themselves into an engagement with it, hoping that that would work. That doesn't work because forcing yourself, it creates this kind of seeing it as a threat rather than something to learn into, creates this situation of tension immediately from the outset, and creates a notion of threat in your mind. if you can learn into it or be curious about where it came from and begin to manage that, all of a sudden you have an affirmative approach to it that your mind is starting to open up about. Forcing, I would say as a teacher, almost never works because forcing creates a sense of threat or sends a message to your brain that you're in a situation of threat. And when that happens, your brain actually shuts down. Curiosity and joy and openness create an arena of opportunity in your brain, and that opens you up to say, what's really going on here? Brings down the threat level, brings down the fear level, and allows you to begin to much more clearly and calmly look at the roots of these behaviors. So again, let me stress, forcing does not work. I think you can try it, even in the television programs when they had people deal with their fears, it was more like getting comfortable with the thing rather than forcing you to be exposed to it. So just to let you know in that. So here's a traumatic event projected onto other related activities. Again, disrupt them and reverse them. Find this Tai Chi or this Judo where you confront, stop, reverse, see it in a different way. Again, this is this notion of creatively playing with something, an emotion, rather than simply going, oh my gosh, I've got to deal with it with my limited ability. Now, if you're going to deal with it with your limited ability, the same framework that gave rise to the fear in the first place, it's not going to work. You're going to have to get beyond yourself, deeper within yourself, widen your vision in order to get the kinds of resources and insights that allow you to deal with this. So, one person said, I would like to have to say my greatest personal fear is failure. I went through these emotions of failure when I didn't make it through nursing school. I'd waited years to do my prerequisites to enter the program, and when I finally did, I didn't make it through. After that happened, I went into a depressive mode for about a year because I felt like the biggest loser in the world. It took me that time to realize that everyone fails at something, but the point is to know how to go on after a failure. The way I know this fear creeps up is when taking classes through the semester, I get anxious about grades. And when the semester is over, I'm waiting on the final grades. That last week always seemed long and torturous because I'm waiting to see what kind of grade I'm going to get. Now I have 3 more courses before graduation. My fear is bigger and it tends to creep up more often, especially with assignment deadlines. The bigger the stakes, the bigger the fear. Again, nice thing about this class is you can actually investigate this fear, talk about it, and it accounts for the class. That's not lost on me. I want you to work through these as well as using them as ways to actually contribute to the class material and the assignments, okay? So this person uses exercise. That's a good positive way to deal with fear. Literally, a lot of fear has cortisol, has stress hormones, has things in your body. Working out physically is a great way to just work through some of that on a physical level and create mental clarity. So I would have to say that that's one of the things that can be done. The things that we're doing in this class have more to do with looking more into the feeling, but exercise does work, and I regularly exercise myself. Here's something I did note up here. Mental anticipation creates anxiety. The thought that what might happen creates the actual feeling. Why is it that we tend to be tilted toward negative expectation? Why is it we remember the one negative comment we received on our speech or paper presentation and a sea of positive comments? Well, evolutionary biology or psychology would probably say because the threat to your physical survival in life depended upon you being much more precise, accurate, and attentive to something negative. Something positive seems like a luxury, something negative could kill you, okay? But we're in a modern life in which that's really not an appropriate mentality. Our physical problems are actually much far reduced, so far, in fact, that it's actually our mental and emotional stresses that have a much greater likelihood of killing us. So even using evolutionary psychology, we would have to say our existence basis has changed to where managing our emotional mental states are actually more important than our physical state, outside of eating well and exercising, the basic things that maintain decent foundation for mental and emotional health. I'm a very big advocate. I'm actually vegan. I eat very well and I exercise regularly. So that's good. But outside of that, that is creating a good positive basis for physical health. No tiger is going to come swallow up and eat me, okay? what's going to happen is I create stresses in my life that weigh on my heart. I experience heart disease, or my emotions cause me to eat poorly, and that creates, maybe colon cancer, creates the conditions in my body that other opportunistic diseases, including colds and fevers and stuff, can jump in there. Lack of sleep and so forth, because there's so many ideas in my head I can't get to sleep. So again, there is a link between mental, emotional, and physical states here. Here's another example. One of the negative emotions I've had for many years until recently was that I always thought that people had mental issues, namely depression, were weak individuals that didn't know how to solve their own problems. I grew up in a household where feelings and emotions were something you had to deal with a suck it up type attitude. Perfect example of a sociocultural variable influencing your emotional pattern. You have this as your family attitude, you absorb it, and then you go out into the world and you judge other people, usually negatively, who are in those situations. Then this person actually had this experience, right? Depressed people are crybabies and stuff, but until this person actually suffered from emotional depression. Her self-esteem was low. I always thought I was good enough. I never thought I was good enough for anything or anybody. That's not just a female thing. I had that same feeling. I wrote my whole dissertation on self-esteem partly from this. I obviously acted differently because of my gender was different, but let's keep going on here. When my self-esteem went at its lowest, my depression started to show. I tended to push those feelings aside and not talk about them. Again, the avoidance technique here. I was always afraid that I would be considered weak or that my parents would scold and criticize me for being depressed. So, got to a low point, struggled with schoolwork, gained weight, ate junk food, right? And again, trying to force myself into a daily routine. Now, with something as bad as depression, sometimes forcing yourself to move can be effective because it gets you out there. At least this person understood that depression is real, and it points to what we're doing in this class. What are the roots of depression or sadness? And how can it be turned into a strength if a person learns into it? So again, a positive, affirmative, strong, practical approach in this class. I just made the comment, excellent EQ, meaning emotional intelligence and analysis. This person says, from my own perspective, thought and feeling are two separate entities that play major roles in the existence of one another. Absolutely correct. For instance, I tend to overthink, so for me, I can think myself into negative feelings that I would not otherwise have, which can be a major downside to how I process emotions. However, it can also do the opposite by thinking rationally about a situation before I react, creating clarity, and I would say even positively, creating opportunity. And I believe that those who use less thought to feel their emotions and act solely on those emotions probably tend to be more expressive and less rational, which is not always a bad thing. Again, passion, the marriage of thought and feeling. Those passions and being able to empathize with someone else really require heart-based approaches, an ability to clearly work through the systematic roots of your emotions and your interactions with others, and having the presence of mind to say, stop, let me hear you out, and empathize with you requires the mind to work hand in hand with the heart to recognize the situation and then make the empathy happen. So without the heart, there's no empathy. Without the mind, there's no, wait a minute, let's stop this situation so we can empathize. And again, without a pretty healthy body and respect for yourself and other people's physical underlying thing, stress or other kinds of poor diet and other things can overwhelm the ability of your heart and mind to work to help these things happen better. So all these things are linked together. I'm just going to go ahead and bring this one out. I vividly recall a time when I was humiliated by my math teacher in the 4th grade. The professor asked what the answer to a problem was, and I was the only one that had a different answer. She, that is a teacher, made me stand in front of the classroom to solve the problem and proceeded to tell my classmates how wrong I was. I was sure that I had done the math correctly, so I went home and told my parents what had happened. My parents worked out the problem themselves and found it was right. I was right. My mother took me to school the next day and spoke to the principal about it. She allowed me to present the problem to the principal, and he told me my answer was correct. He called the teacher and told her that her method of ridiculing me for having what she thought was a wrong answer had been unacceptable, and on top of that, she was the one who was wrong. She had to apologize in front of me, of all the classmates, and the principal gave our class a talk about respecting others and accepting different answers without being rude or mean. Now, that must have been traumatic for the teacher as well as the child. But here's the interesting thing. Even though this person had it right and the teacher had it wrong, and this person was vindicated, it still left a lasting mark. I have to I have to push myself, this is what this person is saying, to discomfort if I want to change this behavior. The main emotion I experience during similar events is fear. The unlearned theme, going back to the Ekman book, is thwarted or being thwarted or humiliated. The learned trigger is being in a situation in which I must give an answer out loud in front of many people. This trigger is very similar to the original situation. I feel nervous when answering a question in class or something I'm afraid of trying to answer or comment about something that I'm sure of because I fear I might be wrong. The nice thing to this question is after she's done this analysis later on in these notes and later on in the exercises, she went to a conference and she's starting to work on that and finding some good positive reinforcement for doing so, where someone's not jumping on her, that she's actually contributing to a field of ideas everyone is sharing and working on. So this has a happy ending in terms of, or happy next chapter. I hope it even gets happier after that in terms of this. She said, I learned this trigger when I was 8 or 9 years old, and the event had quite a strong emotional charge because my teacher was making fun of me, and there's so many classmates. So you had an authority figure that accentuates the emotional charge, and doing it in public, the humiliation accentuates the charge. Okay, so these people who are like my family, okay, intimate people, have increases the charge. If they criticize you, it increases the emotional charge. Although this experience was not repeated since then, I have raised my hand and been told I was not completely right during a lecture, perhaps. However, those instances were not as intense unless someone made fun of me. When it comes to my affective style, I'm a more laid-back type B personality. I think I react to events with the adequate amount of intensity. I like to think before I react or respond. Okay, so it still left a mark. That personality type helps, but the person was still learning to deal with it. And that's what I said here. Traumatic situations, even when you're proven right, can leave a lasting impression. They have to be worked through by reversal, counter-learning in a positive direction. So we're getting up close to the half an hour mark, so I'm probably going to just use a couple more examples on this. Emotional pattern this person has decided to retouch upon is that my minor anxiety overload attacks that I have when I'm confronted by a discussion that has opposite views between me and someone I value the opinion of. Often, case being my mother, she's a person who takes great care in decision making and creation of her opinions, often based on a personal moral, based mainly on her past experience and religion. Okay. So this person decided to watch all the materials before delving into the experiment. The first thing that came to mind after I watched a few of the videos was the concept of your moral stance and judgment changing to more politically conservative charge stance when placed in an environment that elicits feelings of disgust. Okay? So by knowing that and saying this is going to intensify my mom's emotional reaction, this person did a very creative thing. Okay? And it involves family, so it intensifies the emotional charge. It involves her infant son. Oftentimes there's high frustration and occasional feelings of disgust from diapers or messy eating. So again, mother is a little bit more straight-laced, it seems like. The first mental check I was made to ensure that she didn't do. So arranged by getting rid of some of these stimuli and arranging for dinner early that evening, leaving the son at home. So this could be a girl's outing. Again, thinking out, cognitively appraising the situation and those triggers, eliminating them. Okay. And pre-typing out a few bullets to remember when I discuss the touchy topic of my future. Okay, here's the issue, all right? Here's the amazing creative thing. Knowing that our mom was professional and really received information well in a kind of professional format, she actually created a small PowerPoint presentation with notes and a few pictures from the internet, as well as one that she had taken with her son that had relevance and to add a little more emotion. A brilliant, creative, imaginative thing. Impressing upon my achievements, I figured if thinking the situation didn't work, reframing it into one she works with daily in a business and more professional format may make her open her mind a little bit more than usual and realize I'm serious and need to speak my mind. By treating yourself as serious, by being professional in your presentation, and including the person's way of receiving information, this person is now maximizing the chances of her having a successful, compassionate connection with the person she's trying to relate to. When I first broke out the laptop after the appetizers arrived, I could see her carefree attitude quickly became guarded. She's like, what's going on here? Okay. Her lips pursing as if she already knew whatever I was about to present was about to leave a bad taste in her mouth. Though I ensured that appetizers were not at fault, I think as my voice became a little stronger and as I continued to present my stance to her, she felt the empathy of our readings discussed. As I began, disgust as in talk, not disgust in terms of like contempt. Okay, as I began to see a little emotion toward the middle, when I discussed our hardships and how we overcame them, she shared my slightly misty-eyed smiles in her direction. She stayed silent through the entire thing. So she's really beginning to relate even their family past and so forth, creating a groundwork of empathy here. One of our weekly readings explained that a few psychologists believe that empathy is a necessity for human survival and therefore a part of our nature. And I imagine if it weren't for these empathetic feelings thought to be caused by mere neurons, or why my mother and I can relate and find a common ground to this important situation. And here's the punchline. Though I was left feeling the common jitters and anxious flip-flop of my stomach after the confrontation, I feel it was one of the best and more open discussions on my educational future we have had thus far. We have even agreed to take a trip to possible graduate universities to see what options are open to me. This looks to me like an unmitigated success. It's not going to change things overnight. It's not going to change necessarily a conservative or overly careful view or even necessarily judgment about what this person views you should do with your future. But you've established yourself as an adult and established yourself as a peer and a colleague and someone who respects her and the way she receives information, and brought your own self-confidence forward. So this is why these kinds of approaches are so helpful. Look at all the things that were done here, using the appraisal and understanding to eliminate distracting stimuli of disgust, including her sons and messy diapers. This person looks like a little bit anal retentive, her mom does here. So eliminating those distractions, those stimuli, okay? Taking the time to get into a comfortable environment, which is just the two of them, apart from normal, family interactions, so that there's a kind of new slate being here. Developing a PowerPoint presentation, some bullet points to create a professional presentation that will link up with this person's sense of what is valid information or valid knowledge, okay? Developing it from a foundation of understanding how they were together as a family, how this continues forth in her raising of her son, and finally, just presenting it forward. Now, a person may not just throw their arms around you, go, this is amazing, especially if they're a much more reserved personality type. But as you can see, the success is in what happened. This person's mom is going to go with her to graduate universities to see and be open to looking at that. So again, a great example and a wonderful example of what can happen when you take confidence emotions instead of just saying you have to work around them or avoid them. But you take them on, and not only take them on, but instead of forcing yourself into them, you're taking them on with an open heart and open mind, and you're communicating that sensibility to other people who may not have that ability. So this is something that you have to educate others on in the way that you interact and present yourself in an emotional situation. And that can be sometimes hard to be the leader of the situation, but it can be very rewarding as well. So we hit the 33-minute mark. I'm going to go ahead and stop this particular video, but we will continue on with this. We're going to continue on with looking into fear, looking into anxieties, looking into interpersonal situations. So many great examples about empathy that I haven't even touched on yet, which I'm going to share with you. And they have a lot of these same steps. Again, using your mind, your heart, and sometimes even your body, your physical health, to open yourself up and create situations that are more helpful or empathetic to another person's communication style. So, that's good. We'll leave it at that for now. I think I'll probably have 2 more videos here. But until then, this is Dr. Zeus signing out, and I'm hoping you're enjoying this, and I will get back with you soon. Bless you. Bye.